Kicked out on my 18th birthday. Now they want Maine to pay for the family's reputation. Not a chance. I always thought I had a good relationship with my parents. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any family, but I never imagined that they would do something like this to me. It was my 18th birthday, a day that should have been filled with joy and celebration. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. My parents sat me down at the kitchen table and without any warning or explanation, they told me that I had to leave. I was shocked and confused. What did I do wrong? Why were they kicking me out? But they didn't give me any answers. They just told me that they wanted their alone time and that I was no longer welcome in their house. I begged and pleaded with them to let me stay, but they were cold and unfeeling. They didn't care that I had nowhere else to go or that I was barely an adult. They just wanted me gone. I left the house that day with a feeling of heavy betrayal that I had never felt before. How could my parents do this to me? I felt lost, alone and abandoned. For the next few days I tried to survive on the streets. I slept in alleyways and begged for food. It was a humbling experience and I felt like I had hit rock bottom. I missed my old life, the one where I had a roof over my head and a family who loved me. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to realize something. My parents didn't love me. They didn't care about me. They just wanted me out of their lives so they could have their alone time. It was a hard truth to accept, but it was the truth nonetheless. And as I came to terms with it, I started to feel a sense of anger and defiance. I wasn't going to let my parents break me. I was going to survive no matter what. As I wandered the streets feeling lost and alone, I started to think about my extended family. I had an aunt and uncle who lived in another state, and while we weren't particularly close, I knew they were good people. So I decided to reach out to them. I called my aunt and happened. She was shocked and appalled by my parents' behavior, and she immediately offered to help me. Within a few days I was on a bus heading to my aunt and uncle's house. When I arrived, they greeted me with open arms and tears in their eyes. They couldn't believe that my parents had kicked me out on my 18th birthday with no warning or explanation. My aunt and uncle were kind and supportive, and they did everything they could to make me feel welcome. They gave me a room to sleep in, cooked me meals, and helped me find a job. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a family again. It was a shock to the rest of the family when they found out what had happened to me. They were all outraged by my parents' behavior and couldn't believe that they could do something so heartless. But they were also relieved that I had found a safe place to stay. My aunt and uncle didn't hesitate to take me in. They knew that I needed help and support, and they were more than willing to provide it. I was so grateful to them for everything they did for me. As I started to settle down, I realized I couldn't let my parents get away with what they had done to me. I didn't want revenge or anything like that, but I also didn't want to keep their behavior a secret. So I decided to be honest with both my mother's and father's side of the family about what had happened. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And while it caused some tension and discomfort within the family, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was no longer carrying the burden of my parents' betrayal alone. With my aunt and uncle's help, I started to rebuild my life. I got a job, started saving money, and they enrolled me in college. I was very grateful for their help. I was determined to make something of myself despite everything that had happened to me. But then, a month after I had been kicked out of my parents' house, they called me. They didn't apologize or express any remorse for what they had done. Instead, they explained that since I hadn't lied to the rest of the family about what had happened, they had suffered reputational damage and they expected me to compensate them for it. I knew this was just another way for them to try to manipulate and control me. They demanded that I pay them money because I hadn't lied to the rest of the family about what had happened. I was stunned and completely taken aback. How could they expect me to give them money after what they had done to me? It was just another reminder that they didn't care about me at all. But I refused to let them break me. I stood my ground and refused to give them a single penny. I yelled at them about how they could even think to ask me for money after what they had done to me. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief rush through me. I refused to give them a single penny. I stood my ground and I told them that they had kicked me out without any warning or explanation, and that they had no right to demand anything from me. They threatened to sue me, but I told them that I knew they had no grounds to do so. As the argument escalated, my uncle could hear the commotion and ask for the phone. He took the phone from me and told my parents off, calling them out for their behavior and their audacity to demand money from me. It was a surreal moment, but I was relieved knowing that my uncle had my back. Update 1. It had been about 7 months since the fateful phone call with my parents. My life had changed dramatically since then, but I was finally starting to feel like myself again. I had found a new sense of independence and self-reliance that I had never felt before, and I was grateful for the support of my extended family who had taken me in when I needed it the most. But just when I thought I had moved on from my parents, they called me again. At first I didn't recognize the number, but when I heard their voices on the other end of the line, I knew exactly who it was. They sounded contrite and sorry for what they had done, and they even asked how I was doing. I was caught off guard by their sudden change in tone, but I wasn't going to let them off the hook that easily. I knew that their apologies were insincere, and that they were only reaching out to me because they wanted something. So I politely told them that I didn't need them in my life anymore. At first they seemed taken aback by my words, but then the anger started to seep through. They accused me of being ungrateful and selfish and said that I would regret pushing them away, but I refused to let them guilt me into submission. I knew that I had made the right decision for myself, and I wasn't going to back down now. I hung up the phone feeling a sense of finality. It wasn't an easy decision to cut my parents out of my life, but it was necessary for my well-being. I didn't want to carry the scars of their abandonment with me. I knew that I was strong enough to overcome them, but that wasn't the end of their pestering. A few days after the phone call, my aunt and uncle called me to tell me that my parents had shown up at their house unannounced. I was shocked and angry. How dare they show up at a place where they are not welcome? I could sense the discomfort in my aunt and uncle's voices as they told me what had happened. My parents had demanded to see me, and had refused to leave until they were able to talk to me. My aunt and uncle had stood their ground, but my parents' persistence had made them uncomfortable. I could feel my anger boiling up inside me. How could my parents be so brazen as to show up at my aunt and uncle's house like that? Didn't they understand that I didn't want anything to do with them anymore? I knew that I needed to confront them and tell them once and for all that they were not welcome in my life. So I decided to go to my aunt and uncle's house to talk to them face to face. As soon as I arrived at their house, the atmosphere was tense and there was an air of unease. I saw them. My parents were still there, sitting on the couch like they owned the place. They looked surprised to see me, but it didn't take long for the anger and resentment to show in their eyes. "Why are you here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We wanted to talk to you," my father said, his tone surprisingly calm. "About what?" I pressed, not willing to let them off the hook. "We're sorry for what happened," my mother chimed in. "We were going through a rough patch and we didn't know how to handle it. We never meant to hurt you." I could see through their act though. It was clear that they just wanted to come back into my life so that they could continue to use me for their own selfish needs. And when I called them out on it, they started screaming. They demanded that I forgive them and let them back into my life, but I wasn't having any of it. To make matters worse, they then turned their attention to my aunt and uncle. They demanded that my aunt and uncle pay them money to leave and never come back. It was a disgusting display of entitlement, and I was horrified that they could even consider asking for money after everything they had put me through. My aunt and uncle were having none of it though. That was the last straw. They kicked my parents out of the house, threatening to call the cops if they ever showed up again. I haven't heard from them since, and I hope I don't ever again. Everybody in the family was made aware of the situation and what had happened. I honestly didn't know how toxic and bad my household was until I lived somewhere else. "You want her out of your house? Okay, but at least give her a damn warning. Let her get a job and save some money." What in the world, bro? Nah. You can tell that OP was embarrassed to reach out to her family. She got lucky that they took her in. I felt this when I read the last sentence OP wrote. To think that you have a normal relationship with your parents because that's how you grew up and not know how terrible it is a big deal and a horrible feeling. Nobody should ever go through that. Next story. To start with, I have worked for a salary as soon as it was legal in the UK for me to do so. I've now reached a point in my life career where after bills and savings, I'm able to afford stuff like designer jewelry, bags, shoes, etc. That hasn't always been the case. My family is Asian, and since they got married, my parents had fully financially supported my dad's family and also given financial help to my mom's parents when they needed it. It wasn't unusual for my parents to take me shopping every 3 or 4 months to buy new clothes for my cousins while I got hand-me-downs or second-hand clothes from charity shops and car boot sales. Even when I started earning money, I would have to put it into my parents' account and only get between £10 and £20 a week back. Meanwhile, my cousins could ask for new phones, styling products, bikes, etc., and they would be bought for them. So, while as a household we were probably making enough income to count as middle class, we were living frugally. This continued well into when I began uni. Around that time, however, my uncle's wife started making comments about my parents paying for their 4 kids' university fees, weddings, and them inheriting the house they lived in, which is jointly owned by my parents and has been willed to me. That was the wake-up call. They needed to realize that they were going beyond just helping out a family in need, but were actually funding their lifestyle while effectively depriving ourselves. After I paid off my student loans and had enough saved for a deposit on a property, I realized I have enough to treat myself. So, I started to buy some of the mentioned designer goods. I guess my cousins saw stuff on my IG and started messaging me along with their mother to harass me, saying that they have been forced to get jobs while I'm just splashing my cash on things I don't need. It's true, I could send them that money, but I want to have nice things for myself for once. Does that make me an ahesh? Teh, you might want to pass all these messages along to your parents with the caption, "Now they want me to send them all my money too." They are parasites. While I don't understand the weird need to post luxe goods on SM, hell, any rando could be at a store and take selfies and not buy. Ta, it's your money, do with it as you wish. I'm Asian too, and I was raised poor even though my parents did have money. I learned how to budget and how to save. I had to learn to give myself a treat every now and then. You're not doing anything bad, you're just living your own life and no one should have a problem with that. Nah, there might be cultural pressure on you, but where I come from this doesn't happen. What you make is your money, you don't have to spend it on anyone else, plus you can spend it on whatever you want for yourself. Your parents are adults, if they want to give their money away that's their choice, but you are not obliged to do the same. Next story, I 33, female, have a sister 23, named Hannah. I am a stay-at-home mom and have 3 kids. I'm in charge of 100% of the household duties while my husband takes care of the bills. Hannah met her husband, 30, male, when she was in college. They got married shortly after she graduated. Hannah is on the spectrum, gets overwhelmed very easily, and is a little slow. Because of this, her husband told her that if she doesn't want to work, she doesn't have to work, and he will take care of everything. Hannah has never worked a day in her life. Her husband is a high earner and comes from a wealthy family, so money isn't a problem for them. She also rarely cooks or cleans. The most she will do is load the dishwasher and put dirty clothes in the washing machine. The only thing Hannah does during the day is play with her 4 cats or read. She likes to knit too. Recently we were over at my parents' house for dinner. During dinner, my mom would not stop gushing over how good my brother-in-law treats my sister. She almost started crying because of how happy she was. My sister found someone who loves her and takes care of her. My mom even gave my brother-in-law a hug and thanked him for taking such good care of her. At the end of the dinner, my mom picked up my dad's plate. I picked up my husband's plate and I was expecting my sister to pick up her husband's plate, but no. My brother-in-law picked up my sister's plate and told her to go relax, and when he does, they can head back home. She asked him to hurry but don't rush because she's tired. He gave her a kiss and told her he would be in a heartbeat. This didn't sit right with me. When I got done doing my and my husband's dishes, I went to the living room and saw her laying down on the couch. I went over to her and told her she should start contributing more to her household or husband will get tired of her. She seemed confused at first and I said to her, no man wants a useless wife. My brother-in-law walked in on me saying this and got very mad. He yelled at me that my sister isn't useless and worth isn't measured in how often she does the dishes. He called me bitter and told me I was pathetic for talking to my sister that way. He thanked my parents for the lovely night and barged out of the house. My parents agreed with him and told me that I was being harsh and shouldn't intervene in my sister's marriage. They said that I should apologize to my sister and that I sound jealous of her. My husband told me I was right and that nobody but my brother-in-law would want to marry my sister and that she doesn't contribute anything to her household. Eta for trying to give my sister marriage advice. Eta. Their marriage is none of your business. I think you're used to believing women are meant to serve men. You clean up your husband's plate, but I'm assuming his legs work and he can clear his own plate. You do seem jealous. You take care of a house and kids while your husband works and she doesn't have to do anything. But here's a little advice for you. You can be the best cook and the best housekeeper a man has ever seen. It doesn't mean he won't get tired of you. It won't keep him happy. So please don't think that because you spend your time serving your husband and doing everything for him that your marriage will be more successful than hers. I'm not agreeing at all with her not doing anything, but if her husband isn't worried about it, then it doesn't matter. Eta, and an awful sister at that. Your sister finds a loving man that understands she can't do much like others and he's perfectly fine with that because, well, he married her knowing that. She helps by doing dishes and laundry and just being a good person to her husband who clearly adores her. You called your own sister useless and her husband got upset for a good reason, because what man would want someone insulting his wife? You sound jealous, rude, and honestly just not a good sister. How can you write this and not realize that? Don't be surprised if they both stop talking to you until you apologize, because just reading this makes me so sad for her. Eta, you expected your sister to pick up her husband's plate. Newsflash, she married an adult male, not a baby. They are happy together and you are jealous and apparently viewed as a servant by your husband. Quit being jealous of their happy life and taking it out on your sister, who is married well and I bet is a very sweet person who adores her husband, and that is why he's with her and happy. If you were smart, you'd have not only at least pretended to be happy for her, but taken a good long look at what she has versus what you have, and just maybe she'd have helped you get out of the relationship to find someone who doesn't view you as a servant and expect you to pick up his plate. But hey, go ahead and burn those bridges now. Your husband sure picked a winner here. Let me guess, he was chilling out while you picked up his plate and did his dinner for him. Huh? Your brother-in-law called it a spot on the nose.